Сбирка. Thank you very much to give me the right to speak before you, to invite you to Sofia. It's the first time for me. I hope not the last one. And I'm really sorry that I cannot speak in Bulgarian and I need the translator. By the way, I'm not speaking a very good English. I prefer to speak in Hebrew, but they didn't find a translator for Hebrew, then I will speak. But I hope the translator will ameliorate, make it better, my speech. You see, I'm quite sure. I wrote this book by mistake, because it's not my field of studies. I have not a right. I didn't have a right to write this book in Israel. When I wrote it, I wasn't sure that it would be translated to English or to French, really. Now it's more or less 17 languages, and it's going to be translated to 4 more. It's a big surprise. 17 yet, and 4 more in this year. Now, really, I was surprised that it was become so famous, that I become so famous. I'm not modest, but I'm really surprised. Why? Because, in the bottom line, I think that it's a very simple book. It doesn't mean that you can go to sleep with a book like this at the end of the day. But it's not. You know, I started with basic childish questions. For the student between you, I can give an example to start to ask questions that nobody asked it. You understand? You know, we are used to repeat the stupidities of our parents, especially the stories of the national education. You know, all my life I was speaking about Jewish people, Jewish nation, and even when I was a leftist, when I was young, revolutionary leftist, I was always speaking about the Jewish nation. Now, in the last years, the last 10 years, under the influence of a few English writers that put a finger of new questions like, what is a people? What is a nation? What is nationality? What is nationalism? And also, I remember, it's the meeting of two processes. Putting the questions about what is the essence of nations, people, nationality, and combined with the other process of research that was Israeli archaeology. You know, in the last 15 years, more or less, Israeli archaeologists discovered that the exodus of the Jews from Egypt didn't happen. It was a myth. The exodus, the Jews from Egypt, Moses and all this. The archaeologue in Israel discovered that it is a myth, a legend. I remember the day that the first time I heard explanation that, this historical process didn't happen, never happened. And I understood that everything is possible. You understand? Everything is possible with questions, not with answers. And then happened something strange. I combined the English research about nationality with the research about the Israeli archaeologue. And this is a product of this combination. Now, I remember starting my book dealing with the question, what is a people, what is a nation? And I remember asking myself, it's very important to understand, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, we can speak about people when there is not journals, not books, not TV, not radio, not internet. Then a peasant. I ask you to try to imagine a peasant living 50 kilometers from Sofia 500 years ago. Do you believe that he knows that he is Bulgarian? Really? You thought about it? 500 years ago. And with the Jewish myth, they believe that 4,000 years before, People knew that they belonged to a Jewish nation. You understand? I decided to start again. I arrived to the conclusion that people in the nation are a product of modernity. To speak about a people in the modern sense of the word, we need some education, general education, a standard language, and a level of communication that is a product only of the last 100 years. You understand me? Then I don't believe that we can use the word people in the modern sense of the term on 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, or 4,000 years ago. The goals was not a nation, not a people. The Tefton wasn't a nation or a people. And also Jews didn't exist for 1,000 years ago as a people or as a nation. Oh, a lot of Jews in Israel didn't like it. Much less in Paris and New York. And I will explain in the end why, especially in Paris and New York. I think a people is a product of modernity. When there is a kind of general education, a standard language, and the feeling that you belong to a people, it's quite modern. People is a human community that shared a secular daily culture and also a language, more or less, okay? And also, I can put forward that a nation is a people to ask a sovereignty of itself. I mean, a nation is a people that want a state for itself. Later, in questions, if you want to, I will make it more clear, this problematic between people and nation after my terminology. Then how come that in the textbooks of pupils in all the schools in the Western world and all the other world, people are studying that they are pupils are studying that they are peoples for 1,000 years. I believe that a lot of you studied in school, in the high school, in school also, that you exist as a people from the 48? 681. In the Bulgarian people exist from 681. Old nation, old people, not old like the French and not old like the Jews. Quite old, no? The problem is, to build nations, you have to imagine back peoples. To create new nations, you have to imagine. It's not enough that you have a common language. It's not enough that you have a political common consciousness. You need to invent yourself to the back, to feel that you are something that is coming from very, very far. This is national identity. It's not enough to live the present. You need a long past. I have a kind of German education with long sentence. I'm sorry. I will be much more French. Okay, it's shorter. The bottom line, the theoretical bottom line is that it's not nations that create nationality in nationalism, but it's nationalism that create nations. It's very strange, huh? To think that nationalism create nations. Now, there is not nations without newspaper in general education of all the pupils, of the citizens in the people. And this is more or less the product of the 19th century. Then I will not fix for you when the Bulgarian people started, because I'm a nice person, but the Israelis knows that I'm not very nice. Because my book tried to show that in the modern sense of the word people, it's Zionism that creates the Jewish nation. It doesn't mean that Jews didn't exist in the past. I think that Judaism is one of the most important religions in the Western world. It's the basic of the Western monotheism. And in my book, I don't have any critics about Jewish religion, even if I'm not a religious person at all. But people become crazy about my book in Israel. Saying that Judaism is a very important religion and not a very important nation make the Israeli historiography afraid for me. At the beginning, I didn't understand why exactly. No, really, it's not a joke. Later, with the critics, I started to understand the problem. You see, naturally, we believe that people, nation, has a right on the land, of a land, no? But religion doesn't have a right of a land. Then if I say that Judaism is a great religion and not a great chosen people, by the way, about the concept of chosen people, you have to understand, I'm not critic about the belief of a lot of Jews that they belong to chosen people. I'm not critic at all. The concept of people was a concept of a religious community, living, existing under the Christian civilization, and later under the Islamic civilization. To continue to be a Jew, you can do it with the concept of a chosen people. Then a little Jew here, near the Christian cathedral, the biggest Christian cathedral, believing that he belongs to a chosen people 100 years ago, it's quite different. And then a colon in the occupied territories, a settler in the occupied territories, colony. It's quite different. This little Jew, near the Christian cathedral in Saint Denis or in Sofia, that believes that he belongs to a chosen people, it's quite different than an Israeli colon with his arm running on the hills of the occupied territories and believing that he belongs to a chosen people. A month ago, it was discovered that 70% of the Israelis believe that they belong to a chosen people. And this I cannot accept. A Jew, my grandfathers that believe that they belong to chosen people, in my colleagues, soldiers, that believing in a chosen people and have a nuclear weapon, it's quite different. I don't hide in my book my political positions in the end, even if I'm a historian. Then to expose you my decomposition of the idea of a Jewish people, the decomposition of the idea of a Jewish people, then my book, that is a historical book, after the Bible, showing that the Bible is not a historical text. I try to show in the first chapter, historical chapter, that the Bible is not a historical book. Not the First Testament and not the second one. It's a very great theological text. I remember thinking only to write about history in the Bible. And then I arrived to the question of the exile of the Jew from Judea, from Palestine. You see, as an Israeli pupil, I was educated, like all the others. The Jews were expelled from Palestine. In some moment in the book, I remember writing the book, I went to the library looking for research, scientific book about the exile of the Jews from Judea. I'm quite sure that there are people here that believe the Jews were expelled by the Romans from Judea. No, I'm quite sure. Not only the Jews between you. I remember going to the library and I didn't find one research book, scientific book about the expel of the Jews. And I started to work about it and ask what happened with the people in Palestine, in Judea, in the land of Israel. What happened with them? If they were not expelled, what happened with them? And step by step, I discovered by Roman historians, even Jewish historians, that most of the population in Judea that wasn't expelled by the Romans, by the way, the Romans didn't expel people. The Jews become Christian and after it Muslims. they become much more Muslims than Christian. You know why? Because Judaism is much more nearer to the Islam than to Christianity. Even if you define today the civilization of Europe has a Judo-Christian civilization. I will, in the answers, if you will have questions, I make it more clear, my critic. Between Jews and Muslims, there is not a problem of killing the God. The Muslims don't believe that we killed their son of God. It's very important. Okay, and also the Muslims didn't believe that a God can make a son, like the Jew. Then the population become Muslims without knowing that they become Muslims, because Muhammad is another prophet that recognized all the other prophets before. That my conclusion that in the 17th century, most of the Jews become Muslims. It's not my opinion. I'm not original. The first Zionist coming to Palestine, Ben Gurion, you heard the name David Ben Gurion? They believe that the Arabs in Palestine are the descendant of the Jews. It's not me. Till the first revolt of the local people against the Zionist colonization, Zionists say that the Palestinians are the real descendant of the ancient Hebrew. And they accuse me that I believe that Palestinians today, they are the real Jews. The real Jews, the real descendant of the Jews. The Palestinians. No, I think that Palestinians of today are a mixture. Now, I don't believe that the Palestinians are the direct descendant of the ancient Hebrew. I think that it's a people, a mixed people, like all the people in the world. Even the Bulgarian. Sorry. But the chance that a Palestinian will be a descendant is much greater than me and a lot of Jews that are in this room. Sorry again. Now, if the Jews were not expelled from Judea, how come that there are so many Jews in the world? The answer is very simple. Judaism was the first proselytic religion in the Western monotheism. I don't believe that a lot of you knows that there were at least 4 Jewish kingdoms in the history. Kingdoms. You see, I'm speaking before classes in Tel Aviv University, and before me there are sitting students so colorful, so different in image and in their faces, and they believe that they are descendants of David the king. The nice Jewish Yemenite student with the nice hairs, you know, I would say frisé. They believe that it is the wind from the Red Sea that make it so nice. Nobody knows that it was a Jewish kingdom in the 5th century. They say the same thing in North Africa. Physically, there is not a difference between the Jews from Morocco and a Berberian from Morocco. But they believe that they come from Palestine. The same thing is also with the European Jew. And the same thing, sorry to say, is also with the Bulgarian Jew. I try to show in my book that Jews in the world, most of them are natives of the places that they were born and lived and developed. A Bulgarian Jew is not different from a Christian Bulgarian. And sometimes, in some places, the people that choose Judaism were before the others that choose Christianism later. You understand me? A lot of places, people that live in this area choose Judaism before other people choose Christianism. It means that a lot of Jews are more autochthon than Christian in this country. I know that the anti-Semitic between you will not like this idea, and not the Zionists between you. Anyway, you know, I followed all this in my book. This is the reason that it is, you know, so long, too long. I never finished it. I'm quite sure the translator to Bulgarian read it from the beginning to the end much better than me. But I finished the book with a chapter about Israeli today. What do I mean by it?
Zionism is a kind of nationalism like all other nationalism in the world. But if the Bulgar nationalism arrived to create a Bulgar nation, the Jewish nationalism didn't arrive to create a Jewish nation. Most of the Jews of the world, people that consider themselves as Jews, don't want to go to live in Israel. It's okay for my part. I don't feel lonely. But something important. If Zionism didn't succeed like Bulgar nationalism to create a Jewish nation, Zionism succeed better than other nationalism by creating two people. A Palestinian nation, people, in an Israeli nation. Israeli people. Why people? A common language, a literature in Hebrew, a cinema, theater, etc., etc., etc. But Zionism don't want to recognize that it is his child. It's a bastard child. You understand? This is the danger of the existence of Israel today. Because Israel, and Bibi Netanyahu express it every week, say that the state of Israel is not the state of its citizens. But 25% of the Israeli citizens, without the occupied territories, are not considered the Minister of Interior as Jews. 20% are Arab. 5% are immigrants from Russia, not Jews. In basic, the state doesn't belong to them. It means that Bibi Netanyahu is sure that the Israeli state belongs much more to the Jews in Sofia than to my pupils, students in the Tel Aviv University. They are not Jews, Arabs. I have Arab students, Israeli. They are speaking Hebrew better than me. I want you, please, think about it if you are not against Israel. Israel has not a future if it will continue to be the state of Woody Allen and not of my students. Not because Woody Allen is not serious. He doesn't want to live with me in Israel, in Tel Aviv. Okay, I want good relationship with Woody Allen. I admire him. But he prefers to live in New York. By the way, he loves much more non-Jewish girls than Jewish girls, as you know. Anyway, the next generation of Woody Allen will not be Jew. It is not a problem for me. But I'm really worried that Jewish nationalism was not transformed to a civic nationalism, instead an ethnocentric nationalism. This is the problem of Israel, that Jewish nationalism, it means Zionism, didn't change to a civic nationalism, and continue to stay ethnocentric. You understand me? I'm afraid of a Kosovo and Galilee. The Arabs, the Israeli citizens Arabs, are majority in the Galilee today. If tomorrow they will do like the Kosovar, as you know, the Kosovar are Albanian, they don't want to belong to Albania. Everybody knows it. Sorry if there is a Kosovar here. You are a Kosovar? Sorry. Yeah, you are a Kosovar? Anyway, I'm for the Kosovar. There is not a problem. The fact that they are Albanians doesn't mean that they want to be a part of Albania, that it's much more poorer. The Palestinians in the Galilee, most of them don't want to belong to Palestine, to the occupied territories. They are Israeli citizens. They are speaking the two languages perfectly. But Israel says that it's a Jewish state, not the Israeli Republic. This is the reason that I wrote my book, to say that Israel is not a real democracy. It's continued to be much more an ethnocracy. Thank you very much.
I don't